Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos, or should I say violin building videos. In today's episode, I'm going to cover part 11 of my electric violin build. And what that means is I'm going to start final assembly. Now, I don't know if I can get the final assembly done in this episode. I really doubt it. So I'm going to probably have to spread it out over a couple more episodes. But I'm going to get started in doing all the assembly today, and a lot of that's going to involve getting stuff laid out. So what I mean to say is, as I was getting ready to do this video and was kind of rehearsing some of the work that I need to do, I was doing research online to get information about doing the final assembly. And what I was looking for specifically was string spread at the nut, string spread at the bridge, the string height over the fingerboard, the scale length. And what I found was, with a full-size 4/4 scale violin, there are no definitive numbers. There is a range of numbers for every single measurement. So I guess that's good in a way, because if you don't get something exactly right, there's a good chance you're somewhere within the range. But I was expecting to find very specific numbers for everything, and I just didn't find that. So I did a lot of research, and what I've come up with, I think for myself, is I just want to sort of get into the range of the different numbers for the string spread, the string height, and all that stuff. And one of the things that I found when I had ordered a lot of the parts for this, for example, this bridge, when I got it, I just assumed that's the bridge. All I have to do is place it into position and string it up. But no, it doesn't work that way. Even though there's a nice radius on the top of this bridge, which matches the radius of the fingerboard, the bridge isn't finished yet, because to get the string action correct, you have to trim off some of that top. Then you have to thin the bridge a little bit, and then you get it to the height that it needs to be, so that when you string up the instrument, your string action is playable. Right now, it's almost twice as high as it needs to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you in and show you how I am thinking that I'm going to get this setup initially started, and position the bridge and get the string height and string spread and all that stuff done. So let's get started. The first thing I have to do to fit the bridge is to sand the feet to ensure that they have good contact with the surface of the violin's body. To position the bridge, I have to measure the scale length from the face of the nut with a ruler. And in this case, this violin's going to have a scale length of about 13 inches. I don't have to be exactly accurate here, because the bridge isn't going to be fixed into position. It's going to float, so I can move it around. But once I have positioned the bridge at that 13-inch scale length, I'll use a piece of masking tape to indicate where the front of the bridge feet need to rest on the top of the violin. That's just temporary during the setup process, so that I can remove and then replace the bridge during the setup and always get it in the right position. But then what I also have to do is determine where the center of the body is, where the bridge is going to be located. So I'll measure between the two F-holes and figure out exactly where that center is, and then I'll mark it with another piece of masking tape. So where those two intersect, that is the very center of the body at the start of the scale length for the violin. Now, this next step isn't absolutely necessary, because you can eyeball the position of the bridge. However, I decided to go ahead and mark the center of the bridge just to make it a little bit easier, especially since I've never made a violin before, and I just want to get this right. Now here's where things get a little bit complicated, because what I need to do is I need to mark the string spread on the bridge, and I also have to determine how much of the top of the bridge needs to be trimmed away in order to put those strings at the right action over the fingerboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some thread, and I'm going to place the thread with some masking tape at the nut, approximately where the string would be. This would be the G string as it comes off the nut. Then I pull it back and use my metal measuring, it's a string spread gauge, to figure out exactly where the string would rest over the end of the fingerboard. And then where it contacts the bridge, that's where the string, or that's where the notch will be cut for the G string. Then I'll do the same thing on the other side for the E string. I'll tape the piece of thread down approximately where the string would be coming off the face of the nut, and then I'll use that string spread gauge to figure out where that string is going to pass over the end of the fingerboard, and then where the string intersects the bridge, that's where the slot for the E string will go. And of course, this is one of those situations where it really pays to measure twice and then cut once. Now, at the same time that I'm marking the position of the G to E string spread, I also have to figure out how much of the top of the bridge I need to trim away to get the action correct. So what I'll do is I'll check the string action as it sits right now, and then I will subtract the final string height from it and take that difference, and that's what I'm going to have to trim off the top of the bridge. However, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I couldn't find very many tutorials that explain the method, or at least I didn't really look hard enough, but I had my own idea of how I was going to do this. Before I continue with this video, I want to encourage you to click that thumbs up button down below. And if you're new to the channel, I hope that by the end of the video, I'll have earned your subscription. And remember, making these videos takes time and effort, and time and effort means money. So if you would like to help support the channel financially, you can visit my eGuitar Plans web store. There's a link in the description below, or you can visit the Highline Guitars merch store, which is displayed below the description for this video. And there you can make purchases which will help support this channel financially, but you'll also be getting something in return. Oh, and if you want to keep it simple, you can always just click that thanks button down below and leave a tip in the amount that you would like or that you feel is fair. Now let's get back to the video. Since I'm going to be cutting away a portion of the top of the bridge, I need to mark where the G and E strings will be positioned, where those slots will be cut, so that when I trim away that top, I'll have that line to reference to. So I'll mark those, and then I'll put a little F for front so I know which is the front of the bridge. So to determine how much I'm going to have to trim off the top of the bridge, I did a drawing in Adobe Illustrator at full scale based on the measurements taken from my violin. And at the top you can see where the G string sits. The blue line indicates where it rests right now on the top of the bridge, and the red line indicates where it needs to be. Then the number to the right of the bridge, 0.40 inches or 10.2 millimeters, is the distance between the string as it sits now and where it actually needs to be. So that gives me an idea of how much I'm going to need to trim off. I did the same thing below with the E string as well. Then I transferred those measurements, the 0.40 inches for the G string and then 0.44 inches for the E string, and I marked those on the front of the bridge, and that would tell me where the bottom of the G string and the E string would sit in the notch that I will eventually cut into the top of the bridge once it's been trimmed down. And since I need to maintain the radius of the fretboard on the curvature of the top of the bridge, I decided to make a template, and I drew that onto a piece of thin cardboard and then cut it out with a pair of scissors. Then what I did was I placed that template onto the bridge so that the template was lined up with those two marks indicating the bottom of the slot where the E and the G string are going to sit. And then I drew a line, and that line will help me to determine exactly where to cut the bottom of the slots. Then I drew a second line slightly above that, about a 1/16 of an inch above that, and that's where I'm going to trim down. Now I could have used a paring knife, or I could have used the Italian method to carve down the top of the bridge. However, I decided to go the quick way and use my disc sander to rapidly remove the wood and get it down close to that line. And what I ultimately do, and this is a philosophy I always follow when making parts like this, is I creep up on the final size. So I'm not going to take it right down to that line. I'll come really close to it. Then I'll start checking the string action to make sure that I'm getting close to what I need it to be. And I'll just gradually work my way until I get to a point where I can start to cut the slots. And to do that, I'm going to use just your traditional nut slotting files. After doing a little bit of research, I found that the top of the bridge needs to be about 3/64 of an inch, or about 1.5 millimeters thick. So I marked that with my digital calipers and then took a pencil and drew a line so that I would know how much material to sand away in order to achieve that thickness. And of course, to save time, I used my belt sander to remove most of the material. And then once I was finished at the belt sander, I finished up the surface by sanding it with 150, 220, and then 400 grit sandpaper to get it really nice and smooth. Okay, as I was about to render this video, it occurred to me I needed to explain something that some of you experienced violin makers may have noticed, and that is the position of the bridge relative to the F-holes. Because normally on a violin, you place the bridge so that it lines up with the notches in the F-holes. And as you can see with this violin, the bridge is well in front of those two notches. And the reason is, if you really look closely, you'll notice that the F-holes have been moved back on this design. I did that because I need to make space up here between the bridge and the fingerboard for the pickups that I'm going to install. And if I had left the F-holes in their normal position, they would interfere with the position of those pickups. So I moved the F-holes back, and that's why the bridge doesn't line up with those notches. All right, so most of the bridge work is done, and logically the next step would be to cut the other notches for the strings. However, I can't do that yet because I need to install the strings, and that means I need to install the tuners as well as my tailpiece. And I think I'm going to do that in the next episode rather than to continue with this one. And I'll get the tailpiece installed, the tuners installed, then I can string it up. And at that point, the violin, well, actually I'll have to put the chin rest on as well. But at that point, the violin will be acoustically finished. And what I'll probably do as far as the electronics, the pickup and jack and so forth, is I'll devote an entire episode to that, which, let's see, if next episode is episode 12, then the one after that would be episode 13. So that's what I'm going to kind of shoot for. That could change, however. It just depends on how much I get done in the next episode, part 12. So we'll see. At any rate, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll give this video a thumbs up. That always helps me. Click subscribe if you don't already. And, you know, you can leave a tip by clicking that thanks button. Visit the eGuitar Plan store, the Highline Guitars merch store, do all that kind of fun stuff. And until the next episode, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for part 12.